The absolutely massive clash between Alireza Firouzja and Magnus Carlsen at the quarterfinals of the Weissenhaus Freestyle Chess. We have Alireza with the white pieces. It's the best of two mini match in classical time control. But Chess 960, you can see the pieces have been scrambled on the last row here for both the players, with a bishop on the side, then a rook, knight, bishop, queen, king, knight, rook. It's quite an unconventional position, but Alireza will have to start off with a move, and there's no opening theory which will guide him.
We are
Magnus, of
ready for the
course,
first match of the
loves this
quarterfinals.
format.
Good
He's the
luck to
one
all of
who
you.
has
Please
pushed
start
it
the
all
games.
along. He wanted to play classical chess, and this is the first game. E4 by Alireza Firouzja, supported by the queen, opening up the bishop. These are the small things that have happened because of this move. Let's see how Magnus Carlsen responds back. E5 is the most common way to play in such positions. Symmetry is quite respected in chess 960, and that's what he does. E5 played, and remember, you need to control the center. B4 played. Now this is already very unconventional, but it opens up the bishop and makes a lot of sense. B5 played by Magnus, and what a nice move by Alireza, putting the knight on the side of the board so that he can play F4 castles, and the rook can open up with the bishop here. Magnus, after a long think, almost 21 moves, 21 minutes, plays knight e7. And his point is, if you take here, he wants to play knight g6 and attack the e4 pawn. But Alireza goes for king's gambit style play. He plays f4, pawn takes pawn, and now it's going to castle, I believe, to get the rook on the open file there. Yes, look, king comes to g1, and then he plays rook f1 just so that there's no confusion that he's just played his move to his king to g1. He actually castled there, and that's the rules of chess 960. You can move your king a little bit outside the board, bring your rook over, and then push the king back. D3 played. Now you can see white has a beautiful center, a great bishop, and the f4 pawn is also hanging. So Magnus quickly tries to trade off one of the bishops so that, you know, that long bishop doesn't come and haunt him. Knight takes on f4. White still has a small little edge here, especially because the rook is now beautifully placed on the open file. Alireza is planning to bring his queen to g3, it seems. That's what he does. Now Magnus can actually take here. Queen takes, rook takes, and maybe it's very small edge for white, but nothing special as such. So, but he goes rook e8. And this is maybe slightly weird because after take, pawn takes, I think Alireza has an amazing plan which Magnus seems to have completely missed. Queen takes queen, rook takes, and try to think what is that amazing move that Alireza has up his sleeve. The 90 minutes that both players have for 40 moves is being used really well. Rook b3, what a nice move. He wants to play his rook to a3 to attack a7 and to c3 to attack c7. a6 played by Magnus, and he says if the rook comes here, I'll play bishop b7. But Alireza still plays it because he wants to provoke the bishop coming to b7, and now he's going to use his rook first. He wants to provoke c6 so that the bishop is closed down. Magnus doesn't want to do it. He goes back knight e8, but now Firouzja is going to bring his knight. He's playing this so well. He's bringing his knight to c5. You can't really play d6 here because then knight jumps in and c6 is weak. So Magnus goes castles and Alireza jumps in with the knight. The bishop comes back to c8, but rook a3, and now the a6 pawn is lost. Amazing positional play here by Firouzja. Knight comes to f6, and now Firouzja simply takes the pawn. He's pawn up. Magnus Carlsen has to tread carefully here. He still has drawing chances, especially because the white bishop isn't particularly great there, but a healthy extra pawn is what Firouzja has. What should Magnus do next now? Yes, he plays d5 in order to activate his pieces. especially his rook on e5. And Firouzja now has to decide what to play. He takes the pawn, which is the logical move. Knight takes, and the knight is attacking the pawn, is threatening to come to e3. The rook is now on the open file, so black has good play, but Alireza quietly plays his pawn to a3 and asks Magnus to show his compensation. Where's your compensation, Magnus? Magnus jumps in with his knight to e3, attacking the rook and the bishop. Of course, there's only move, which is rook to e1, and Alireza plays it. Now, you can't move the knight because your rook would be hanging. So, Magnus brings his rook to e8, doubles it here. One of the problems that black has is his weakened queenside pawns. And Alireza is going to attack it with rook c6, I believe. Exactly, great move there by Alireza. He tells Magnus, yes, you can win my bishop here, that's okay. But I'm going after your pawn on c7. The knight and the bishop are traded. It's said that rook endgames are generally drawn if you are just a pawn down. Will it happen here as well? Let's see. Rook e7 played to defend the pawn on c7, and now the rook comes up to d2 to defend the pawn on c2. And Magnus goes g5. He wants to gain some space on the king side, and he's going to do it with his king side pawns by pushing them. Rook comes to f5. Nice move by Magnus. The point here which he's trying to get is he wants to get his rook to e1, the other rook to f1. So first a check on e1, the king has to move away, and now the other rook comes in. So Magnus somehow is creating this counterplay. If he can get f5, f4 and then rook h1, it's a checkmate. So he's just building this mating net up against Firouzja's king. But Firouzja here comes back rook c3. This is not a good move. The right move was rook d3. But rook c3, f5. Now it seems like Magnus is within the drawing distance. King g3, play your pawn to f6. G6. This could be a very, very important move. The main point is f5 is guarded. But he makes a mistake here by playing king h7, and Firouzja is right there. He knows, he sees the move, which is a very important one. I think Magnus has completely missed it and missed the fact that the f5 pawn is undefended, and so now if one pair of rooks are traded, he's worse. But Magnus had check prepared. Firouzja goes king f3. Now, either you trade the rooks, which is great for white because then there's no attack, or you keep the rook, but now you've given up the all-important g4 square for the king, and Firouzja plays his king to g4, attacking the g5 pawn. So his rook is now attacking c7, king is attacking g5, plays his king to h6. A good move now is, of course, h4, breaking here so that these pawns become even further weak. But Firouzja goes rook takes c7. He takes the pawn. Maybe there is some hope by giving rook e3, rook g3 check. But he goes, yes, he plays rook e3. Firouzja moves with his king forward. He goes king f5. g6, there is king f6. Goes rook e1. That's the last mistake of the game. And it's a bad move by Magnus. He's made a big mistake here because now Firouzja can give a check. If the king goes back, then the g5 pawn falls. So then he has to go to h5. And what's the only move now? Because if that move is not found, this position is lost for white. But Firouzja, of course, going to see it. Rook g6, fantastic chess. g5 is falling, then f4 falls. Game is over. Magnus Carlsen resigns. And Alireza Firouzja has outwitted the great champion here, Magnus Carlsen, in the first game. Now Magnus must win on demand in the next game in order to equalize the score. But what was simply phenomenal to see is how Alireza Firouzja managed to play so much better than Magnus out of the opening, keep the advantage, keep the pressure. At some point, Magnus did show his defensive skills, but it was not enough. A final error meant that Alireza had the point pocketed in the bag.